In the year 1100, there was a city in North America larger than London, larger than Paris. A city with earthen pyramids rising 100 feet into the sky, a plaza the size of dozens of football fields, and a population that, by some estimates, rivaled the greatest cities of medieval Europe. It wasn't built by any civilization most people learn about in school. No wheels, no metal tools, no writing system, as we'd typically define one. And yet, somehow, thousands of people moved millions of cubic feet of earth by hand, basket by basket, to build one of the largest cities on the planet at that moment in history. It's called Cahokia. It sat on the Mississippi River floodplain, just miles from where St. Louis, Missouri stands today. Cahokia's location wasn't an accident. It sat in what archaeologists call the American Bottom, a wide, fertile floodplain near the confluence of the Mississippi, Missouri, and Illinois rivers, in what is now southwestern Illinois, directly across the river from modern St. Louis. This spot offered nearly everything a growing population needed. Rich alluvial soil, replenished by seasonal flooding, made the land exceptionally productive for growing maize, which by this period had become a central part of the diet across much of what archaeologists call the Mississippian culture. A broad network of related societies spread across the American Southeast and Midwest, of which Cahokia would become the largest and most influential center. The convergence of three major rivers also gave the site enormous advantages for trade and transportation, connecting Cahokia to an enormous catchment area stretching across much of the continent. Archaeological evidence shows people had lived in this region in modest numbers for centuries before Cahokia's rise. But sometime around 1050 AD, something changed dramatically and quickly. Within roughly a single generation, the settlement expanded at a pace archaeologists describe as genuinely explosive, a transformation some researchers have termed a Big Bang moment in the region's history. Population estimates for this period of rapid growth vary considerably among archaeologists, but the consensus is that Cahokia grew, within decades, from a modest village into easily the largest population center north of Mexico, and one of the largest cities anywhere in the world at that particular moment in history. What triggered this sudden surge remains genuinely debated. Some researchers point to religious or ideological factors, possibly a new cosmological movement or leadership structure that drew people to the site. Others emphasize the practical agricultural advantages of the floodplain combined with growing regional trade networks. Most likely, it was some combination of both, but whatever the precise cause, the result was unmistakable. A small farming community transformed, in an archaeological blink of an eye, into a genuine American metropolis. At the absolute center of Cahokia stood its defining structure, Monks Mound, the largest prehistoric earthwork anywhere in the Americas north of Mexico. The statistics alone are striking. Monks Mound rises roughly 100 feet in 4 distinct terraces and covers a base footprint of approximately 14 acres, a scale genuinely comparable to the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza, though built through an entirely different method and for an entirely different purpose. Archaeologists estimate the mound contains somewhere in the range of 22 million cubic feet of earth and clay, every bit of it moved by hand, almost certainly using woven baskets, in a construction process that unfolded across multiple building phases over roughly 2 centuries. This wasn't accomplished with wheeled carts, draft animals, or metal tools, none of which existed in this part of North America at the time. It was accomplished through an extraordinary mobilization of coordinated human labor, requiring the kind of organized planning and sustained community effort that tells us a great deal about the sophistication of Cahokian society, even without the written records that survive from contemporary civilizations elsewhere in the world. At the mound's summit, archaeological evidence indicates a large wooden structure once stood. Widely interpreted by researchers as a residence or ceremonial building associated with Cahokia's paramount ruler, sometimes referred to in later Native American oral tradition and by archaeologists using the term Great Sun, borrowed from related titles used among later Mississippian and southeastern societies. From this elevated vantage point, standing physically above the rest of the city, the ruling elite would have been visibly and symbolically separated from the general population below, a deliberate architectural statement of authority and status embedded directly into the city's most important structure. Monks Mound was extraordinary, but it was only the centerpiece of a far larger constructed landscape. Archaeologists have identified at least 120 mounds across the broader Cahokia site, though the true number originally built was likely higher, with some lost to modern agriculture and development before systematic excavation began. These mounds served multiple distinct purposes. Some functioned as platforms for important residential or ceremonial buildings, similar to Monks Mound itself. Others served as burial mounds for elite individuals, and the specific function of many others remains a subject of ongoing archaeological interpretation and debate. The urban core spread across an area most estimates place at roughly 5 to 6 square miles, encompassing not just Cahokia itself, but two related and closely connected mound complexes now located within the modern cities of St. Louis and East St. Louis, meaning the full scale of this Mississippian urban landscape extended well beyond what the term Cahokia typically refers to today. At the heart of this layout sat the Grand Plaza, a deliberately leveled open space covering roughly 50 acres directly south of Monks Mound. Excavations have shown this plaza wasn't simply open, unused ground. It was an actively engineered public space, filled in and flattened by its builders, that functioned as the city's central gathering point for ceremonies, markets, and public events, including the widely popular game of Chunky, in which players hurled spears at a rolling stone disc, competing for accuracy as the disc came to rest. Archaeologists have found chunky stones, called discoids, at sites scattered across a huge portion of the North American continent, physical evidence that Cahokia's cultural influence and the games and traditions associated with it spread across trade and social networks, reaching people who likely never set foot in the city itself. Just west of Monks Mound, archaeologists uncovered evidence of a genuinely sophisticated astronomical structure, a series of large, evenly spaced circular arrangements of massive wooden posts, which excavators nicknamed Woodhenge, after the famous stone monument in England, due to its similar circular calendar tracking function. Excavations have identified at least 4, and possibly 5, separate versions of this timber circle built successively at the site over time, using red cedar posts set into deep pits arranged in a precise circular pattern. By standing at a specific central observation point within the circle, Cahokians could track the sun's position along the horizon throughout the year, identifying solstices, equinoxes, and other significant points in the solar calendar with real precision. This wasn't a casual or approximate system. The careful, repeated reconstruction of these timber circles across multiple building phases indicates sustained, deliberate astronomical observation over a considerable span of Cahokia's history, likely used to help determine the timing of planting and harvest cycles, as well as major religious festivals and ceremonies tied to the agricultural calendar that sustained the city's large population. Beyond its monumental architecture, Cahokia functioned as a genuine urban center, home to a population whose exact size remains one of the more actively debated questions in North American archaeology. Estimates for Cahokia's peak population vary considerably depending on methodology and which surrounding areas are included in the count. Figures across serious archaeological sources range from roughly 10,000 up to 40,000 residents within the core urban area, with some estimates for the broader surrounding region reaching higher still. Older, less rigorously supported estimates from earlier in the 20th century sometimes claimed figures as high as 100,000, but most current archaeological scholarship favors more conservative figures in the tens of thousands. Still an extraordinary number for this period in North American history, and enough to make Cahokia comparable in scale to a number of contemporary European cities. Residential areas surrounded the central mound and plaza complex, with archaeological evidence of organized neighborhoods, agricultural fields supplying the city's food needs, and satellite villages spread across the surrounding floodplain. Excavated artifacts point to skilled craft production, including finely made pottery and ornamental goods, alongside clear evidence of long-distance trade networks. Materials like copper, mica, and marine shell, sourced from regions hundreds or even thousands of miles away, have been recovered from Cahokian sites, confirming the city's role as a hub within an extensive continental trade network. Cahokia's religious and cosmological life appears to have centered on beliefs connecting agricultural fertility, celestial movement, and the natural world, with archaeological evidence including small carved stone figures, sometimes interpreted as representing a female agricultural deity associated with fertility and the cycle of life and death. Offerings likely intended to help ensure successful harvests for a population entirely dependent on the productivity of the surrounding floodplain. Not every discovery at Cahokia points to peaceful prosperity. One excavation at a smaller ridgetop mound, archaeologists designated Mound 72, uncovered evidence that complicates any purely celebratory picture of the city. Excavations at this mound revealed the remains of close to 300 individuals interred in a series of distinct burial episodes. At the center of the most prominent burial, archaeologists found the remains of a man laid out on a platform made of thousands of shell beads, arranged in a pattern some researchers have interpreted as representing a falcon or bird figure, surrounded by grave goods suggesting genuinely high status. Nearby, however, excavators also found groups of individuals, predominantly young women, buried together in ways that many archaeologists interpret as evidence of ritual sacrifice, rather than natural death or conventional burial practice. This interpretation remains an active area of archaeological research and, to some degree, scholarly debate regarding the precise circumstances and meaning behind these burials. But the physical evidence, the number of individuals involved, their positioning, and the clear association with a high-status central burial, has led most researchers studying the site to conclude that ritual human sacrifice, tied to elite authority, religious cosmology, or both, was very likely practiced at Cahokia during this period. This is an uncomfortable part of the story, and it deserves to be presented honestly rather than glossed over or sensationalized. Ritual sacrifice practices in various forms appear across numerous ancient civilizations worldwide, and Cahokia's evidence should be understood within that broader comparative context. A genuine, well-documented aspect of the society's religious and political life, not a detail to either hide or exploit for shock value. For much of its early history, Cahokia's central ceremonial district stood open and unfortified, a telling sign in itself of a period when the city likely felt secure in its regional dominance. That changed around 1175 AD, when archaeological evidence shows construction of a substantial wooden palisade wall enclosing the central precinct around Monks Mound and the Grand Plaza. Excavations indicate this wall was rebuilt multiple times over subsequent decades, incorporating regularly spaced bastions or projecting guard towers along its length, a design specifically suited to defending the wall itself against attackers who might otherwise approach unseen along its base. The construction of a fortification on this scale requiring an enormous quantity of timber and sustained labor to build and repeatedly maintain, strongly suggests that Cahokia's leadership perceived a genuine and ongoing threat by this point in the city's history. Whether from external rival groups, internal social tension, or some combination of both remains uncertain from the archaeological evidence alone. What is clear is the contrast this represents. A city that had spent generations expressing its power through open, monumental, unguarded architecture was now investing heavily in defensive infrastructure, a meaningful shift that historians and archaeologists generally read as an early sign of the instability that would eventually contribute to the city's decline. Cahokia's decline was not a single dramatic collapse, but researchers generally agree it unfolded as a gradual, sustained process beginning sometime around 1200 to 1250 AD, with the site substantially depopulated by around 1350 to 1400 AD. The precise causes remain a genuinely open question among archaeologists, and this video won't pretend otherwise. Several serious evidence-based theories exist, and they aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Environmental stress is one leading explanation. Intensive agriculture and extensive timber harvesting needed to construct and repeatedly rebuild structures like the mounds and the palisade wall likely contributed to deforestation and soil erosion across the surrounding floodplain, potentially reducing agricultural productivity over time and straining the food supply for such a large population. Climate factors are also frequently cited, with some research pointing to periods of significant flooding or drought affecting the region during the relevant centuries, which could have further destabilized food production in a society so heavily dependent on maize agriculture within a floodplain environment inherently vulnerable to both extremes. Social and political explanations round out the picture. The construction of defensive fortifications suggests rising internal or external conflict, and some archaeologists propose that Cahokia's centralized political and religious authority may have become increasingly difficult to sustain as the population grew, resources tightened, or the original ideological forces that drove the city's rapid rise gradually lost their unifying power over subsequent generations. Most current archaeological thinking treats Cahokia's decline as the product of some combination of these environmental, agricultural, and social pressures compounding over time rather than any single decisive cause or catastrophic event. It's a genuinely unresolved question in ongoing research, and one of the reasons Cahokia remains such an actively studied site today. That's Cahokia, a city that, at its peak, rivaled the great cities of medieval Europe in scale, built entirely by hand, without wheels, without metal tools, without a written language, as we typically define one, by a society whose full name for itself has been lost to time. Its people tracked the stars with wooden circles, moved millions of cubic feet of earth basket by basket, and built a public plaza large enough to gather thousands. And within a few centuries, it was largely empty, its name, its language, and much of its story left for archaeologists to piece back together, one excavation at a time. If you want to keep discovering the lost city's history left behind, subscribe, because we're just getting started rebuilding the past, one city at a time.